Greetings, everyone. Today we're going to explore variables and expressions. For today's lesson, you will need the variables and expressions note sheet and a writing utensil. Pause the video whenever you need, especially to gather supplies and for when you are ready. Something to remember. On each slide, if you see a pencil, that means there is information that you are going to need to write down. If you do not see a pencil, that means it might just be an extra example or supporting information. All right, now that you have that foldable ready, let's just go over a few definitions we're going to use this year. The first word is quantity. A quantity is anything that can be measured or counted. If you're watching this video on your own or at home, feel free to pause to write things down. If you're in the classroom or with others, let each other know if you need a pause or a moment to catch up. The next term is variable. A variable is a symbol, usually a letter, that represents a value. Quick question. What variable do we tend to use the most in math? I'm hoping you're thinking of the letter X. That's the usual. Now, it could be a symbol. So when we talk about this symbol, that's a symbol that represents the value of pi. Technically, I could draw a triangle and say it represents a value. So typically we use letters like X and Y, but it could also be a shape, a symbol, or even from another alphabet. Let's talk about these two types of expressions. A numerical expression is a math phrase with numbers and operation symbols, but no variables. An algebraic expression is a math phrase that includes one or more variables. Let's talk about the difference. A numerical expression has no variables, so it might look like this. There's no equal sign and no letters. An algebraic expression might look like this. Now we have a variable involved. What we're going to work on is how do I take words and turn them into symbols, and vice versa, symbols into words. So let's start with example 1. I'm given the expression 5 minus a number D. Let's write it using letters, numbers, and symbols. 5, this is why we went over vocab, minus, you'll notice this weird phrase, a number. All that means is we just need to use the variable D. Let's talk about this phrase, a number. Anytime you have a variable, we're going to write a number in front of it. Why? Well, what does that letter mean? Like if I use the number P, does that stand for pencil? If I put a number P, then that tells me, oh, P is representing some number, not pencils, not papers, just a number. Let's try a couple more. 32 more than a number N. So I have 32 More than. What operation was more than? And use that vocab sheet from the previous lesson. More than means addition. 32 more than what? N. Let's look at example 3. 8 times a number n. Times. Now there's a couple ways you can write this and a couple ways you shouldn't. Most commonly, you're going to see 8n. Or, please write this down, 8.n. Here's what's not okay. Please do not write 8 times n. I know that's the first thing you learn in elementary school, but now that we're dealing with variables, that looks like 8xn, and that could mean something totally different. So we want the number and letter to be next to each other or with a dot. Let's look at this one. A tough word. We're going to have to keep working with this. The quotient of a number n and 5. So quotient means division. So we can write that a few ways. Let's show at least 2 in our notes. The n comes first, followed by the division, followed by the 5. The order does matter. N is first, then 5 when we're talking about division. Or you could write it as n divided by 5. Now let's add another step to it. 3 more than twice a number x. We have 2 operations here. Let's break this down. I see 3 and I see x. But I also see twice. What does twice mean? That means there's going to be a 2 involved, right? More than means addition. Maybe write the symbol underneath to help you remember the words. When I have twice, that means actually 2 times. Right? If I have twice as many pencils as you, I'm timesing by 2. All right, let's try to put this into an expression. 3 more than twice a number x. 2 times x plus 3. Or you could write it as 2x plus 3. Here's what's not okay. So both of those are okay. This is not okay, right? We need to flip that 2 and x around because that doesn't look right. I would also accept if you had 3 plus 2x. More than tends to come after. But addition's commutative. That means no matter the order you add, you have the same answer. So I would also accept that third option. Let's try another tough one. Let's look at all the vocab words. We've got number 9. Less than means subtract. Quotient means division. Let's try it out. Order matters here. Please write order above less than. If I have $9 less than you, then it's not 9 minus your money, it's your money minus 9. So 9 less than, this order does matter. Less than what? Less than the quotient of 6 and a number x. I would also accept if you used a division symbol. We don't tend to see that as much. Or if you like using a slash to represent your division, as long as it's clearly division and it doesn't look like a 1. All right, let's take a look at the opposite. Instead of writing the letters, numbers, and symbols, we're going to write the words. Now, notice there's no pencil on this slide. I don't need you to write this down, just follow along. So on this first example here, you'll notice the letter and number are next to each other. That means we're multiplying. There's a lot of words we went over for multiply. We could say product. We could say times. We could actually use the word of. I'm going to look at the two most common. The first one is the word multiply. We're going to try a sentence that way, and we're also going to try a sentence with the word product. Now, you only ever have to write one sentence, but I wanted to give you an example of two. First, I could say 3 multiplied by, see how that sounds good? Here's the weird phrase, a number x. Before every variable, you need that phrase, a number. Let's try with the word product. This is going to look different. The product of 3 and a number x. That phrase, a number, is going to actually be the hardest part of what you're doing, just to remember it. All right, let's get back to our notes. Example 7, EX7. I have this symbol here. There's a lot of words for that. So I want you to think about it. Do you want to use the word plus, added, add, more than? I'm going to use the word plus because I'm guessing that's going to be the most common word that's going to be used. So I'm going to say a number x. Let me try again. A number x plus 8. If you like the phrase more than, let me show this. You choose which one you want to write down. I could say 8 more than a number x. See how that changes things a little? Let's take a look at example 8. Be very careful. A lot of you are going to miss this. There's two operations here. There's technically multiply here, and there's addition. So watch out for that. A lot of you are going to forget about that multiplying. Happens all the time. Let's create some sentences. I'm going to choose 20 multiplied by a number x plus 11. Now, could you use other words? Could you change it around a little? Yeah, you definitely could. Instead of writing, let me share a few other sentence options. 11 more than 20 multiplied by a number x, or 11 more than the product of 20 and a number x, the product of 20 and a number x, add 11. There's a lot of different ways, so what I'm checking is, does your sentence make sense? Does it sound good? Do you have all the operations and their correct usage? Take a look at example 9. Again, be careful, there's that sneaky multiply in there. And we have subtraction. Let's try a few sentences. Again, I'm going to write only one option, but if you want to write something else, please do so. I'm going to say this time, the product of 5 and a number x, subtract 1. You could say minus 1. You could say 5 times a number x minus 1. You could say 1 less than the product of 5 and a number x. So there's a lot of options. So one of the reasons why I love this lesson is because you get to put your own thought into it. There's not one right answer when you're writing your sentence. Let's take a look at example 10. This one only has one operation, so I'm going to keep it simple. 8 divided by a number n. Keep it simple. You could also say, though, the quotient of 8 and a number n. Take a look, there's no pencil on this slide, so I'm just going to briefly walk through this example. Even though it's not in your notes, you might see it somewhere else. It might be helpful. So if you recognize this later on, feel free to come back to this video and look at this example. So Dorothy gets paid to walk her neighbor's dog. For every week, she earns $10. So we have this table here, right? So after 4 weeks, she made $40. After 5 weeks, she made $50. Pretty simple, right? Our goal is, how do we get from one side to the other? What's the same operation that would get me there? Well, let's see, how can I get from 4 to 40? I could times by 10. So my goal is, can I repeat that operation and get the same outcome? And I can. So what that means is, weeks is represented by W, right? So W. That would be the 4, the 5, the 6, the 7, however many weeks she worked. And we decided we're going to times by 10. Now, I don't like that little X there, right? So I'm going to change that to a dot. And what that does is that equals the pay, the P. So that's going to equal P. Now, because I'm looking for an expression, you actually only need this part. Which means, FYI, you could also write it as 10W. All right, let's work on this again, but this time on your note sheet. The cost of beverages in a vending machine is shown, and we want to write a rule for the cost in words of an algebraic expression. So my goal is, how can I get from here to there? Well, let's see. If one beverage costs $1.25, am I timesing by $1.25? If I can repeat it, then that means that's the rule. Is 2 times $1.25 $2.50? Is 3 times $1.25 $3.75? In this case, it is. There's no beginning cost, there's no addition or subtraction on this one. So I now have my rule. What letter, though, should I use for beverages? Typically, we use the first letter. So I'm going to say B times 125, $1.25. That's my expression. You could also write it this way. If you write $1.25B, if you use the letter X, to be honest, that would be okay too. All right, now that we're done with our notes sheet, what I need you to do is take a look at Google Classroom so you know what practice you have to work on. All supplies, papers, whatever's needed, you can find there if you're not in the current classroom. If you need anything, keep in touch. And until next time, have a good one.